code, and there we go. Okay, good afternoon. Hoping you had a good day. Let's have PHP functions today. Like I've said, I'm gonna be a little bit fast on the theory. So now imagine you are a restaurant owner and you're running this business for the restaurant, and your favorite dish, or maybe say your favorite niche, is probably eggs or the omelets. So every other time your colleagues comes in to the restaurant, your customers come in, they order for the eggs, and then you go ahead and boil the eggs. So you go ahead and write the instructions or the steps that you follow in boiling the eggs, probably from cracking the eggs, getting the ingredients ready, putting the eggs on fire, and plus the cooking oil and then the saucepans, then boiling it and until it's done. So once it's done, you go ahead and serve it and you give it to your customer. Then the next time another customer comes in, they order the same thing, eggs. So you also go back and then keep the same procedure again. Write the instructions down step by step. You write and then you do them. Now, time is going to come that that's going to be a little bit tedious, especially when you have many customers coming in. So the better way would be writing all those instructions down, and the next time you want to use it again, you just pick that particular, maybe you write it on a paper and probably paste it on a wall or a sticker or anything, and you put it on a wall. And the next time you want to do something like that, you just look at the wall on that sticker and you follow the instructions which are there. Now that's basically probably your recipe for making the eggs, or recipe for making a chapati or any other dish that you like. So in PHP, we call those recipes as functions or set of actions that we do. In the recipe, there are some steps that you follow. There are some instructions that you follow, which you have labeled them in step, from step 1 to step 2 up to when you reach the last step and when the recipe is ready. So, and that recipe and those instructions are basically what we have to repeat every other time when you want to achieve that particular task. Coming back to PHP, we can think of our functions as those recipes, or maybe say those instructions that we have bundled together and put on a sticker or on a paper and pasted it on the wall. And in that sticker, there are a lot of lines of instructions or the steps that we follow. And in our PHP, it's going to be lines of PHP code that we follow whenever we want to achieve a task which a particular function achieves. So the function is just going to be something like your recipe, which sometimes that particular recipe needs ingredients. And the ingredients in this case can be, if you're boiling eggs, can be the eggs, can be the onions, can be the cooking oil, or it can be basically just about any other thing. Now, you can go ahead and pass in those instructions or those ingredients, which in functions we call them arguments. Then there are some other times that you're going to have a recipe which does not require any ingredient at all. Like, for instance, you want to boil water. You just go ahead and start boiling that water. You're not going to add anything on it unless you want to make tea. Then you probably need the tea leaf or any tea bag that you would like, and then maybe say sugar. Those could be the ingredients, but sometimes you may not need the ingredients. In the same way, functions sometimes they don't need ingredients, they don't need arguments, they don't need inputs. So once our recipe is ready, or maybe say once we have followed the steps by step in that particular recipe, we come up with a finished product or the food that we have prepared, and that's basically the product, the finished product or the result. In functions also, we can return the result after an action has been performed. Say you are adding two numbers, you have a function that adds two numbers. After you have finished adding the two numbers, you need to give us the results, so the return comes in as the results. So in brief, PHP functions are just those blocks of code, and these block of codes are those step-by-step instructions that you follow whenever you're going to perform a particular task. And here we just define it basically once. We write those instructions once, and then later on we can use it any other time we want it to. And you're going to realize that it's going to be very easy for you to use functions, and you're going to combine your code, or maybe say assemble your code together, and it will be a little bit easier for you to see what is wrong, and you're not going to repeat a lot of things, and you'll be able to read and understand it perfectly. There are some functions which are already created for you in PHP. For instance, the echo. The echo that we use is one of the PHP built-in functions that we use for displaying our text. So those ones are what we call the built-in functions. You're going to create your own functions after this, maybe say in the next few minutes, and those ones are what we call user-defined functions. So anytime you create your own function, we call it user-defined functions. Okay, so built-in functions, like I've said, they always come with PHP, and there are quite many. Some of them we have already interacted with them, others we have not yet. For instance, for manipulating the strings, say changing a string from lowercase to uppercase, getting the total number of characters in a string, or maybe say splitting a string, or maybe say removing spaces in a string. Those ones are what we call the string manipulation functions. Array operations, creating an array, we need a function to do that. Um, File handling, we also have something to do with that. Like for instance, we can go ahead and open up a file, or maybe say write to a file, something like that. Okay. So these ones are some of the built-in functions in PHP that we have, and just gonna be a little bit interesting for us to work with them at any point in time. So for instance, in strings, like I've said, we can use the string length if we want to get the total number of characters in a string, or maybe say a string position for give us the position of a particular character. String substring, maybe say we want to find if maybe say a particular length, I mean a particular a character exists in a string, or we just extract a particular string in our entire strings. Array functions like the counting, the merging of the arrays, the pushing the arrays. This one's you want to count the total number of items in your array. Array merging, you want to join two more arrays together. Array push, you want to add a new item in your array. Array key exists, you want to check if maybe say a particular S key exists in your associative arrays. The math functions like the absolute, probably changing from negative to positive. The square root, you already know that. The random, you want to generate a random number. Rounding, you want to round a number. The date functions like the date, the time, the short time, I mean the string to time, converting our time in a string format. Then when it comes to the PHP user defined functions, these are functions that you're going to create on your own by yourself, and then you're going to use it later. So there are certain syntax that we can follow whenever we must follow whenever we are creating our PHP functions. And to define those functions, we are going to use a keyword function first. Then what is going to follow next is going to be our name of the function. And then we are going to follow that by a bracket, which we call the parenthesis. And the parameters are going to be found inside those two brackets, the opening and the curly brackets. The parameters, just think of them as the ingredients. Like we talked about recipe, the example of a recipe for boiling eggs at the beginning, the steps you take when you're boiling your eggs. So in boiling the eggs, there are some things that you need, which we call the ingredients. And now here in the function, those ingredients are what we're calling the parameters. And we put them inside the brackets here. So after that, we end the line with curly brackets. So the opening curly bracket and the closing curly bracket gives us our opportunity to add, or maybe say to put our block of code together in PHP. Give me a minute. let's continue. So that's just the general syntax of defining your PHP functions. So assuming we want to create a PHP function that goes ahead and greets someone, like I want to say hello and I mention your name, say Joanne or Solomon. Whenever I call that particular function, I just want to display the greeting. This is how we would create a function that does something like that. So anytime you create your function, you can go ahead and use it. When you just create your function, it's just going to sit there and look at you. It's not going to do anything for you until you go ahead and run it. And the only time it's going to run is when you call it. And calling it, we just put the name of the function and then we follow it by the brackets or the parentheses. And in case there are any ingredients which it require, like for instance, we may want to put a name. That's in case when we are creating our recipe, we say that this recipe requires some ingredients for it to go ahead and finish successfully. Or maybe say you want to finish a very particular dish that you're making. It needs some ingredients. Now, if your function also needed such, which we call an argument at the time of calling it, at the time of defining it, we call it a parameter. Then now when it's time for using the function, those parameters, when we're passing the values to them, earlier they were just placeholders, but now we're passing the actual values. Those actual values now becomes what we're calling an argument. Or simply put, in our recipe is just an ingredient. So when you create a function called greet student, this is how you're going to create it. Here we say that we use the keyword function first, then the name of our function, followed by the bracket or the parentheses. And in case there are any arguments or any parameters that we want to put or the ingredients, we put it inside the parentheses. And then we can open the curly bracket again and then close it. Then our code or the instructions that we follow whenever we are performing a particular action, we put it within that. In that case, it becomes the body of our function. So here in this case, the keyword function is here. Then the name of the function is greet students and the parentheses. And inside the parentheses, we just have one parameter or one ingredient, which is the name of the person we want to greet. Then you close that bracket. If there are many, if there are more than one ingredient, if there are more than one parameter, you separate them with a comma. Okay, so in our body of the function now, we go ahead and put the instructions that we follow whenever we want to greet somebody. And if I want to greet somebody, I'll just say the word hello. Then maybe say, if I have their name, if I know their name, I'm going to add the name. If I don't have their name, I'll just say hi or hello and stop there. But if I now know the name of the person I'm greeting, I can just go ahead and say hello Joanne, hello, Helen, hello, Solo, something like that. And now to do that in PHP, we are going to put or just put a string which later on will be displayed. And we use the return keywords to serve or to give people the finished product of our recipe. In PHP, the way we return the finished product is using the keyword return. So we put the keyword return, then in front of the keyword return, we put the value or the result that we want to return. That's why there we see a return, then the string. In the next example, it's a little bit advanced. This time around, we have more than one parameter. Or I can actually modify this question a little. Let me see. Let me create this. I can modify this a little, and let me save this as save as. Then our PHP code always have to be saved inside our XAMPP folder, the htdocs, where it's found. So let me look for htdocs, XAMPP, htdocs, and our work was in, I think, my PHP, yeah. Okay, let me put it inside my PHP here, and I will say, put it as just theory. Create a new folder called theory. Okay. So inside here, I'm going to give this file a name called functions.php. Okay, then down here on the servers type, I look for PHP source files, which should be here. PHP hypertext preprocessor file. Click on that, then click on save. So if I recreate this, function again, I can actually decide to put it in another variable. But anyway, this one is simple. Yeah, not saying the screen. All right, I think I need to share the entire screen just as I actually thought I would sharing the entire screen. Okay. All right, so I'd open Notepad++, then I saved my code in a file. Then now I'm going to go back here and so in this second function here, now we have the parameter that we are going to take in two parameters. The other one only took in one parameter. And this time around, we're going to have a return value also. And to do so, or to do that, we're going to define a new function in this case. Usually I just want everyone to think of parameters, just order ingredients just as variables, PHP variables simply, which we declare them, but this time around inside the parenthesis in a function. That's what I want you to think of as a parameter. Then the arguments later on, they're going to be the values or the actual values that we give give PHP whenever we are using that. So here we define a function called add numbers, and this add numbers takes in two parameters, the two numbers that we want to add. Then inside the body of the function, we just add those two numbers and then we return it using the return keyword. And down there, this is now where we are calling it. So let me recreate the same function, PHP function here. So the first thing is our PHP block or the tag. Then I close that. So I'm going to define the same function still. We use the keyword function first, then space, the name of our function, which is add. Let me just say add two numbers, which is the same as the other one anyway. So I'm going to give it a variable number one. Or I will even be a little bit verbose and I say first number. Okay. Then I'll say second number. These ones are variables. These parameters here, they are simply variables. So if you look at that line, it's just simply a variable declaration. So inside here, what we are doing earlier in this one here, we're just adding the numbers and then returning them immediately. So if once you have defined your variable, like in the previous class, you define your variable, then you go ahead and use the variable. So just imagine on this line of the return, we are just using our variables like this. So that's how we are using our variable. Then we end with a semicolon. So to use this, we're going to, anytime you return a value, just imagine yourself, you walk to the mobile money agent and you say you want to withdraw some money. And once you withdraw some money, in case the mobile money agent fail to give you the money, you're going to complain. You're going to tell them, no, that's not what I'm meaning here. You withdrew money from my line, you need to give me that money. So that's what we are calling the return value here. So on the return, we need to get that value. Now, the next time we call this function here with certain numbers, say 30 and 60, whenever we call this, a PHP is going to run, look for where this function is defined, which in this case is found up on this line. This is where it's defined. So if you imagine there is a silent keyword function here, like this, then that makes this line up to here the same as this one here. And the only, that's because I have a keyword function here and I have a keyword function here. I have the name of the function add numbers here. I have the name of the function add two numbers here. And there is a bracket here, and also there is a bracket here. Then inside here, immediately after the bracket, there is a first number. So that means 30 is going to correspond to the first number. Then there is a comma, and also there is a comma. Then there is a 60 here. That means the second number here is going to correspond to what I have here. Now, that is basically what's going to mean. So when PHP sees this line, it just imagines that in this particular position, there is this first value which has been passed, 30. Then in this second position argument here or parameter, there is this value here, 60. So it replaces all those, then just enters the body here and performs the action, which in this case is going to replace the first number with 30, is going to replace the second number with 60, as we have passed in the order here. Then you know that when you add the numbers 30 and then 60, you get a result of, I think you're going to get 90. So after this, now let me remove this. This is just for the explanation. After this, on this position here, later on, what is going to be found is going to be 90, or the result of adding these two numbers. So this value 90, we need to store it somewhere, or we need to keep it somewhere. We can just display that number using echo on the screen, or we can go ahead and add some detail on it and then display it out. So I can decide to create a variable like what we had done there, say result equals to that, just as what we have done here. Then later on, I can display that particular result using echo. I can also go ahead and combine this with certain string, like say result is equals to, then I can combine it using a dot operator like this, and I say dot results, not reset but results, like that. Save this. Now when I save this and I go and run it, I expect what to be displayed is results 20. I can also go ahead and modify this line, and I say instead of having like that, I can first create a variable which is going to store for me the result of adding the two numbers. So I'll say sum is equals to the first number, and then adding the second number to it gives me that sum. So later on, I can return the variable sum, which is going to store for me the result of adding the two numbers, which will be passed here. So that doesn't change this, it still remains the same thing. But the only difference is that we're first going to add this number and then this number, then store it in the variable sum. Then later on, we can return our variable sum. And on this, on the usage, or maybe say on the calling of the function, we can find it like that. So if I go and run this code, I expect it to let me see if my example is not running yet. So I need to open XAMPP and then run it. Okay, as it do that, we are in. Let me first start the XAMPP control. I double click on it so that it opens for me the XAMPP control panel. Once it has opened, I will come back to it and then start it. So basically, that's what we are doing with functions and then its declarations. We're going to have some other examples later on, but for now, I think this should be enough. Okay. Let me see if this code is already there. Mm, yeah, I think this should be enough. We can also create another function. The one that we had created earlier, say function. Uh, and then we say the name is great student. That's the name of the name that we gave a function, great student. Okay. Then here it was taking the name of the student, or I can even say student. Student name, like that. Then I open the bracket. Now here, can actually just go ahead and say echo and do hello, comma, then a dot operator, student name, like that. So here now I don't need any return keyword because the echo is doing for me the job. So this is a time when you won't need an ingredient or you won't pass an ingredient in your PHP. Okay. So in the call of your PHP function, you won't pass, you won't need a return keyword in the body of your PHP function. So this is what happens whenever you have a code, a PHP function, which does not really return any value. Okay, so yeah, that should be basically enough for that example. Okay, like I've said, the return keyword. So the return value is basically the result in a function that we have finished working on. Say, for instance, you are working on your boiling your eggs. Now, when the eggs is ready, you can give it to people using the return keyword, like in function. So, in the second function that we have defined, we didn't use a return keyword. That means our function will not return anything or any value which is visible. So if I come to this, let me first start my exam control. I think two of them are already open. So let me just start Apache. Then I'll go to the code and run this. So when you look at this, here we're using a return keyword, but in this function, we are not using the return keyword. But at the end of the day, once a function has finished running each and every task which is inside its body, or it's like you're following an instruction, and once you're done, then basically you stop. So whether you're told to stop by using the keyword return, or you have just gone ahead and finished all the instructions which are defined or listed for you, still, that is what we are calling the stoppage, irrespective of how it is done. Okay. So if I go to my localhost, and I'll say local host slash my PHP, and here I'm not seeing anything, but when I go to theory, there is functions. So when I click on functions, I expect These are the results that I see. Why am I seeing those results? Because here on this line, I have a echo, which is displaying for me the results. Actually, let me add a break keyword here to move our task, or maybe say our content, to the next line. And also there is another echo here. So every time you see an echo, just know that your content is being displayed on the screen. That's why we see this output, the result equals to the number. If we change this to say 50, we're gonna have probably 110. And if we say this one to, who is there, say John, when then we save it, now I expect to see hello and then comma space Joan. Then I expect to see result equals to 110. So this is gonna give us 110. That's what I expect. Now, if I don't see that, then it means my result is not correct. So I'm going to come here, then refresh this page, and I expect this particular results. This is basically how you do so. So one is using a return keyword and another one is not using the return. Hey, just some simple rules that you maybe need to follow anytime that you're working with PHP. And whenever you're going to give a name to your function and to your variables, etc., there are some rules that you're going to follow. One, for your name, say for the function, for the variable, for the class, which you're going to see later, the name should be a little bit descriptive. In other words, there should be meaning in your name. Say if you want to, let me say, create a variable for storing the age of a person, and you simply go ahead and use a, like, now assuming I want to store a variable, I want to store the age of a person. So in this case, I can just say a equals to, say, 40. Now, a equals to 40 does not really make sense much as it's the age. So the best thing to do would just use the word age. Anytime somebody sees age equals to 40, just immediately they think of you talking about the age of a person. And again, in case your variables have two or more words, your function names has two or more words, make sure you combine the words together. Something which we call the bumpy case or the camel case. Look at my name for this function here. I have three words: add, two, numbers. So if I have two or more words, the first letter of my variable, the first letter in the first word of my variable is going to be small letter. Anyway, the first word in that name is going to be small letters, all of it. Then the other consecutive words which are going to follow, you're going to pick the first letter of the consecutive words and then you capitalize it, or maybe say make it capital letters. That's why you see two, T is capital, numbers, N is capital. That's how you do it. Then when it comes to, say, great students here, again the word great all are in small letters. Then the word student, S, is in capital letters. So that's the naming convention that you need to follow. Then the class name, in case it's a class, which you'll see later on, it must begin with an uppercase. Our variables and then functions, they begin with small letters. But when it comes to a class, the first letter in the word of the name of the class, it has to be capital letter. For constants, they must all be in capital letters, no matter what. Then if there are more than two, you separate those names using an underscore. Then for the file names, they all must be in lowercase letters. And if they have two or more words, you're going to separate them using the hyphen or the minus sign. there should always be no space at all between the name of your function. Anytime there shouldn't be a space in the name of your function. Okay. All right. I think that's it about the conventions. Let's touch arrays a little bit and then we shall move to something else or even stop there. I gave a brief of arrays at the beginning and I think last time. So in PHP, arrays are basically a collection of items, or in most of these languages, most of these programming languages, you just think of an array as you having a variable, say of type string, and that variable is called name of students. And you want to store all the names of those students at once. You don't want to leave, maybe say just store one name of the student once and then you store another one in that order. But this time around, you want to store all the names of students at once. The challenge with variable is that it only store one value at a time. If it's names of student or it's a name of a student, that variable is going to store only one name of a student at a time. If I want to store the name of Solomon, I'm just going to store name of Solomon. Anytime I want to add another name, say Joan, it's going to stop. It's going to replace what is inside there first and then put the new name there. So that's why I'm saying a variable can only hold one item or one data item at a time. Now, if we want to hold more than one data item at a time, then arrays is our good friends. And arrays can store one or more data item at a time in that particular single memory store. So that's why I'm now saying RSS, a collection of similar or different items of data type are stored in a single variable. So you're going to be able to store multiple data items in that one single variable compared to what the normal variable is. Arrays allow gives you that opportunity. If now I want to keep all the age of all of you, then I'm going to be able to keep it in one location. You can just think of it as a bucket, and this bucket I can put so many things in it. I can put fruits like mangoes, many mangoes in it. I can put, let me say, fruits, other fruits like I say apple, other fruits like say banana, all that. And these items, these data items that I'm putting all of them in this one box, they are in their individual positions, or maybe say their positions inside that box is numbered, or maybe say it's known, and we call it indexing. So indexing is basically just using numbers from 0 to 9 or to any other number, but starting from 0, and then giving the items some labeling, or maybe say some positioning, such that the next time I want to access a particular item and I know the location where I want to access it from, I just walk there. Imagine an apartment, or maybe say imagine a room or a rent or even a hostel. Imagine a hostel, and in that hostel there are different rooms. So, or maybe say imagine one room with many beds in it, and each and every bed is for one single person. Each and every bed is for one single person. So you just walk to your bed and go and sleep. Another neighbor also walks to their bed and goes and sleep. But all of you are within one single room. So you could think of that particular room as the variable. And then inside that room or inside that single variable, there are other beds that each and every one of you is sleeping on. So you have your own bed and you have another own bed. We can just probably just give those beds numbers. Say this bed is going to be number 1, this bed is going to be number 2. So if I want to access or know the person who is on bed number 2, I'll just call the name, or maybe say get the bed number 2, and I will be able to get the person who is on that bed. That is what we call indexing in arrays. So arrays which are indexed, we use numerical numbers to let me say index them. Then for the associative arrays, we use what we call keys. Keys are basically also, you could think of them as another form of labeling, but now this time round, we are able to label unique properties of a data item. With indexing, we are not going to be very specific on the property, on which property or which attribute of the data item we are talking about. Say if we are talking about a student and we're using associative array, or maybe say the custom keys, we can talk about the name of that student, we can talk about the age of that student, and then the address of that student. So the key is now going to be the name, the key is going to be the age, the key is going to be the address, and the values to that age, the value to that name, the value to that address is what we are going to get afterwards when we access the array using a key. Okay, as we are also going to have arrays which have other arrays in it. So if you have another array which is containing another array inside it, that is what we are calling a multi-dimensional array. So this is an example of an index array and an associative array. So for index array, to create an index array, we can use the array function, or later on you're going to see that you can actually go ahead and still use the square bracket. Now, when it comes to accessing the items in the array, or maybe say the students in the room, we have to mention the name of the room, then we use the square bracket, and then we, inside that particular square bracket, we put the bed number or the position or the index of that particular item or that particular student. Now, if I want to access a student at position 1 or at bed number 1 in that room, I'm just going to call the name of the room, then I pass in 1, or maybe say bed 1. That's in case that's how I have gone ahead to index them. And when it comes to associative array, it's going to be a little bit different. Anyway, let's first see a brief example on index arrays. So for indexed arrays, let's say we want to create an array which stores the names of students. So I'll just say students or students' names. Let me just say students, and I say it's equals to. Then we use the array function. And inside the array function, we pass in the name, the different students that we have separated by comma. Okay. So that's basically going to be my array for storing the names of the students. Now, any other time I want to maybe say display the second student, I'll just say echo, then I say students. Okay, then the square bracket, then the second student is at position number 1. Why? Because in indexing or giving positioning, we start the indexing from position 0. So this one here is going to be at position 0. This one here is going to be at position 1. This one here is going to be at position 3 in that particular order. So anytime I try to access my student like this, just know that I have the exact item which I'm going to get. If I start counting from 1, 1, 2, 3, it's going to be at position 1 plus 1. At that particular position, then plus 1. And maybe you can go ahead and create another variable, say cars, or another array, say cars, and then say array. So we can have a blue tech, we can have a Range Rover, we can have a Bentley, and any other. So that's basically how we can create another. Now, if I want to access the last item on this array, need to close this bracket here, else I'm gonna get an error. Okay, so again, to access the array, as simple, call the keyword dot, and then we pass the position of the array. So if I count here, I'm going to notice that 1, 2, 3. My Bentley or my third car is at position number 3. So when I have 0, 1, and then 2, so items at position number 3 in my indexing, it's at position number 2. Okay, then for the associative arrays, we are going to use named keys. All our keys do have names. So this is very important whenever you want to go ahead and add description. Say for a particular student, we want to talk about their name, we want to talk about their age, we want to talk about their address, we want to talk about the things that they like and they don't like. So all that, you can't do it without an associative array. And that's basically how we use associative arrays. Still, we give the name of the array and then the array function, and we can go ahead and pass in now the name value pair. So the name, or maybe say the template name here, is what we are going to be passing in. So the age, then the course, and the name is basically our keys that you're going to later on use. So whenever you want to access an item now, you just go ahead and pass its name, the name of its key, and you'll be able to access the value of that particular item. Now, if we want to have a multi-dimensional array, that's probably when we're going to have an array inside another array. And that's how we create a multi-dimensional array. Okay, then when it comes to the string manipulation, it's basically just you playing around with the string, given another string, which a string is basically just a combination of letters of alphabet. So if you have any value which is a combination of letters of alphabet, that's what we're calling the strings, and you can play around with them using the string functions. The most common ones are the string length, which gives you the total number of characters in that string. That string to upper, which gives you the uppercase version of that particular string. Then for the lower, gives you the lowercase version of that particular string. And then the replace helps you in replacing a certain word that you have passed with using a new word, but when on a particular source string that you want to make the changes. Okay, we can go ahead and join two or more strings using the concatenator, or maybe say what we call the dot operator in our PHP. Then operators are basically just symbols, or maybe say formulas. I mean, not formulas, but let me use symbols that we use whenever there is an operation that needs to be performed by PHP code. And the very most common one is the arithmetic operators, which you're very familiar with: the addition, the subtraction, the multiplication, the division, and one which is different is the modulus division, which gives you the remainder instead of the whole division itself. So the modulus division uses a percent sign as its symbol, and whenever you put it between two different operands, you're going to get the remainder of that result, but not the actual whole parts. Then the assignment operator is the one when we're using the equal sign. Then we can have a little bit a modified assignment operator, which is an equal sign, combined with maybe say one of the arithmetic operators. Say the plus sign and then the equal sign. Let me try to explain this. So for the assignment operators, the equal sign you already know. And assignment operators. Now, for this assignment operators, for instance, when you write these two variables, so assuming we have the first variable, a being equals to 5, with b being equals to, I think let me first use 2 for now. Then let me start with the arithmetic operators. So when I write a percent b, it means what I want to get is going to be the remainder of that particular result, not the actual result itself. Then when I go ahead and write a plus equals to, and I say 1, this one simply means that I've written a equals to a plus 1. Then when I write, say, b, say minus equals 1, main equals to 3. Let me put 1 so that you don't get error. And it's going to be b equals to b minus 1. That's how it means. That's how you interpret that. Okay, then the comparison operators, I think this one you're already well aware of it. The equals, when you want to know the equality, we double the equal sign. Just one equal sign does not mean equality. The one equal sign alone just mean pick whatever is on this side, the right hand side, and put it inside what is in the left hand side. That's what the equal sign means. But then when it comes to the double equal sign, that one means that we are comparing the equality. We want to know whether a particular operand A is the same as operand B. Now, with two double equal signs, we can compare the values itself. But then when you want to even compare the type or the data type of those values, then we can go ahead and add the third equal sign. So 3 equal signs is going to compare the numbers if they are the same, or if they look the same, then secondly it's going to compare their data type also. So there is going to be a time when you may need to use that, because what if I try to compare two numbers and I'm from probably where everything's done, then if I'm trying to compare two numbers, but those two numbers are of different types, but those numbers looks the same. Like for instance, in this example, one is a string and then the other one is a number. If I just use two equal signs, they are going to tell me that they are the same because they compare the values only. But now when it comes to looking at the types, then I have to include the third option. I mean the third equal sign. So others, the greater than, and then the less than, the greater than, the equal sign, the greater than equal sign, and then the less than and equal to, you already know them. The logic operators, for the logical operators, it's a little bit different. It helps us in combining two operands, or maybe say two comparison results at once. So in case I'm trying to, I have two conditions that I want to check. Like for instance, I'm checking this number. Say I want to know whether number A is greater than number B, and also I want to know whether number A is also probably a multiple of something else. Then I can have two conditions, or maybe say I have two decisions, or main conditions that I'm trying to check. So in that case, to get the final result, I'm going to join this result. Now, starting with the AND operator, whenever we have an AND operator, we're only going to get a result of a true in case the operands on both sides of the AND operator evaluates to true. Anytime that one of them evaluates to false, then the entire result is going to be false. The or operator operates a little bit different. It just says, me, I want one of the operands to be true. The rest, I really don't care about it. Okay. Well, I think that should be enough. Let's finish up with comments. Now, there are times that you may not want to go ahead and add any other character, or maybe say you just want to go ahead and add an explanation in your code, what the code is doing, or what which line is doing in your code. So to achieve that, you will need what we call PHP comments. You've probably seen me use PHP comments, but you're wondering what it is. So when I go ahead and add a particular comment in my PHP code, it's simply me telling, or maybe say adding a note to my code, which will later on communicate back to me. Or if I get a colleague and then I want to explain to them my code, then I can go ahead and tell them what it means. And that would be it. So we use the comments later on, or you're going to use the comments to go and add any other explanation. Let me say a part of code which I don't want the PHP interpreter to touch. I'm going to use a comment to do that. So at the end of the day, I'm still going to make sure that my code, anybody who picks and use it, they can easily understand it without even me explaining to them. So we have what we call a single line comment, and then we have another which is called a multi-line comment. A single line comment just comments, or maybe say allows PHP to ignore only one line of code. So where it appears, then up to the end of that line will be ignored by PHP. But when it comes to multi-line comments, we are probably trying to utilize two or more PHP lines, or maybe say add comments in two or more PHP. So this is how it looks like. The first one, the single line comment, we just use a two forward slashes. Then the second one, we use the forward slash, then the asterisk first. And later we have to close it using the asterisk and then the forward slash after. Okay, I think that should be enough for whatever we are looking at. In case you have a question, then I'll be glad to answer it. Right. Any questions so far? Well, I think none. So can end there.